Hello and welcome back to Sinews of War. In the previous episode, we had to declare war on the Mughal Empire after they stopped us from taking some Maratha Confederacy territory with a very cheeky move, so now we have a new war in India to deal with. We also advanced in the Middle East, with Voss now reinforced by Cortland, who were able to take Jerusalem back with no hassle. But we're now at war with Persia as a result of declaring war on the Mughals, and they came to attack us in Brazil of all places, and they actually completely destroyed one of our trade fleets and forced the rest to scatter, so severely weakening the West India Company there. Voss continued on to take Damascus from the Ottomans as well, so starting to get some real gains in their back territories, but Russia declared war on us all of a sudden. So now we have a new battlefront where we had relatively little defences available to actually try and stop them. The war against the Mughals was going well, at least we were managing to take territory from them and besieging some more of their territory in northwestern India, so we'll keep pushing on there. But first we need to deal with the Russians. They took 2 territories from us right away and then came in to take a third, but this time at Kiev we have a full stack inside our town and fortifications. Isn't it just the same out here as it is anywhere? You say you think the Ottomans very different from us, but think about it. Aren't the Ottomans simply what we Dutch might have become? An empire filled with an uncountable number of divisions of every kind, with men who hate each other's families and creeds marching side by side under the same banner. I say a short period of difficulty would be all it takes for our own armies to turn into exactly the kind of shambolic affair we've been crushing. You can already see it happening on the Russian front. Well, sir, that it could have been the same is by no means reason to claim that it is the same, or do I have you wrong? If you don't have me wrong, then you're probably too lowly to be on my staff. But yes, the point I want to make is that life under the command of the Sultan would smell of life under the stadtholders or king. The same fundamental theme rules both, that men of merit and skill should be wasted in the service of men chosen by the devil's lot. In both systems, no ruler can afford to have their servants be poor in ability, for their lack of worldliness needs to be made up for. But nor can they afford to have them be truly great, for then the horse would realize it does not have to bear the weight of a feeble man on its back. Do you intend this to be a comment on our performance, sir? No, although clearly it could have been. I mean to say, the pin on the next medal I'm given will probably pierce me all the way through. So it's time to try and hold the Russians out of Kiev, and it's a bad start because I didn't realise the fort was actually damaged, meaning there are 2 breaches in the northern wall of the fort, so the enemy don't necessarily have to actually make any kind of artillery attack before they storm the place. Their artillery, very luckily for me, actually took a direct hit right at the start of the battle, and they lost one of their guns, and their guns are firing at me, but they're also going to charge their infantry in, so we are not going to have any kind of artillery phase to this fight. So I'm basically putting my own artillery behind the breaches, loaded with canister shot, hoping that anyone who comes through will get a face full of it, and that might cause them to turn back, the rest of my infantry just sitting on the walls. Now the enemy seemed rather contented actually to just throw their infantry against the walls rather than going around to go through the breaches, which was an interesting choice, and it's great for me because all the men I put on the walls will now start bombarding the enemy both with the artillery fort's cannons and with their own muskets, so the enemy going to take large losses as they come to form up in front of the wall and get ready to set up the ropes. A few units looking like they are going to go around and exploit those breaches, but not enough. The enemy aren't going to try and make use of the fact that I put so many men on the walls by just coming straight into the middle. Some of my men on the walls not actually firing, they do tend to mess up like that quite often, but others should be enough to try and hold the enemy from this side, the southern side of the fort, which actually is also under artillery fire. They have this random unit of artillery off on its own on the edge of the map. So they are going to be bombarding the walls for the entire fight, but they are not going to do any significant damage. So the units that attacked on the eastern side have already been routed. They didn't manage to get any ropes up. They spent most of the time just forming up whilst getting shot, so of course that didn't really work. But a couple of units now are going to try and use this breach. Now unfortunately for me, I'd left the guns with the canister shot on fire at will. They had turned to try and target something they couldn't see through the wall, and as a result they weren't ready to fire at the enemy as they came through the breach. So now I had to come back and give them manual orders, but actually that enemy infantry regiment is sort of sneaking around them because it's charging right onto the edge of the artillery. So when they eventually fire, it doesn't really do very much at all. But the enemy are going to be taking regular musket fire from the units they have behind the guns the whole time. and that's going to inflict some moderate losses. The first unit routs, the second unit coming in almost looks like it's going to try and capture that building there, but it also routs before it manages to do that, and they're going to take tons of fire on the way out. I'm going to move the guns out of the way and not have them firing through the breach, seeing how ineffective it was, so we are just going to use regular musket fire. Now the enemy is starting to set up a couple of ropes here on the south side. This unit manages to get their ropes up while under fire without routing, but then curiously doesn't use them. They actually just run off, so I'm not 100% sure what they thought they were going to do with those ropes if they weren't going to climb up them. Possibly they want to come and support over here where they had a single unit of Cossacks which was just annihilated by all of my cav at once, sneaking around to the west side of the fort where I actually don't have any defences. Meanwhile, looks like they're going to try another attack through the breach. This time it's just an infantry line defending against them, and you'll see my men aren't firing. That's because I had them off fire at will and only realised at the last second I needed to turn it back on. So they're going to get a really point-blank range volley on the enemy. Actually just surprisingly little with the first volley, and now the first rank has to fight in melee, but the second rank fires while that melee is going on, and that blast really sends the enemy reeling, especially because I have units in the building next to them now, some dragoons I believe, who are firing out at the enemy, and we also have these canister shot artillery set up to fire onto the flank, so getting stronger and stronger in our defense of that little breach. The other breach, by the way, hasn't been attacked, which is why I've got most of my men focusing on this one. The enemy just want to attack the one closest to them basically, and this unit of Cossacks, after setting up some ropes as if it wanted to go up onto the fort, actually comes over to have a look through the breach. Not looking like they're in a particular rush or anything, just going to have a little peek inside and see what's going on. A few of them get shot, but then they actually shoot back at me with surprisingly high accuracy, cutting down some of the grenadiers defending that position. My men trying to fire back. It looks like they're doing the fire by rank drill, but without the firing part, so that is unfortunate. But eventually they are going to get their act together and actually start returning fire, so we will be able to drive those Cossacks off. Meanwhile, my cav have gone to destroy that isolated artillery unit and been successful, and are now just hunting down random infantry units. The enemy has lots of units just standing around, almost as if they just came back from routing, but they didn't stop. I didn't give them new orders, sorry, so nothing really going on outside the fort. All of the action is at this breach where, once again, the Cossacks trying to get in, now taking that canister shot and actually seeing it get a couple of kills on the enemy. Still not the devastating fire I would have hoped for. Really, it's the grenadiers just blasting them at short range with their muskets that's sending the enemy off, but a bit of canister shot action, so it's proved itself a tiny bit more useful. So at the same time, the enemy are trying to attack on the south side with more infantry units, but they've made some curious decisions, including setting up an infantry square right underneath the fort's guns and all of my musketmen on the walls, and that, as you might imagine, has done absolutely nothing except get them killed. So thanks to the enemy for making this easy for me. They're going to rout in square formation, getting shot all the way. It's a bad day for the Russian army.
Vadim, you said that square would stop the bullets.
I did not say this. You dreamed it. I said it would stop cannonballs.
Well then, where is my left arm?
I don't know. Perhaps it was bitten by a spider and fell off.
You are an idiot, Vadim. I cannot believe the commander listened to your madness. I'm going to make a complaint.
That's fine. Here, I think I can see the commander's ears over here. I'll pass them over so that he hears your complaint better.
Vadim, why are you holding your left arm like that?
It is sprained. I'm just holding it. Why do you ask these things?
That's my jacket on that arm. Hey, get your own arm. I used to lift.
So for the rest of the battle, the enemy are basically going to be throwing units through the breach one at a time to have a go at trying to pierce by defences. So here in comes some Cossacks. My men didn't really shoot them as they came in, but luckily they were soon to rout. My plan here was actually to try and shoot them with the canister shot into the flank, but they routed just as I started firing, and it seems the guns fire at where they used to be rather than where they are now, so they actually shot loads of my own men with the canister shot. I'm just lucky that it's not actually very effective, so we didn't take many losses. Next up, some cavalry decided they might try their luck, sneaking in here, and I'm quickly forming a square to stop them, but actually I didn't really need to do this because they were just floundering. They're just having a look, really, going to size up my defences and then immediately decide they should leave, which I guess is the right choice. Probably shouldn't have come in the first place. Now the cavalry actually ended up fighting in a big cavalry engagement with all of my own cav. The enemy were mercilessly firing into the melee with some of their units, and both sides were taking heavy losses. And as a result of this, I actually lost one of my units of cav to routing, which was very unfortunate. Luckily I have cav superiority, so another unit slams in to rear attack the enemy, and another unit will be able to come in to sandwich it from the other side. So soon the cav engagement was won. And next up, the enemy's general got bored and decided to go and attack the other breach in the wall, the one that hadn't been attacked yet. Luckily I had actually put some men back there just in case such a thing was to happen, so they didn't have much success. They charge in here and now have to face the grenadiers in melee, who quickly form a square. So the general and bodyguard, powerful in melee, but no chance of getting out of this alive. These dragoons trying to fire at the enemy, but facing the wrong way. Only the front ranks seem to know what's going on. They're going to come back and get involved in this combat though. And they also deployed my reserve unit of cav, which had my commander, which had just been sitting in the middle of the fort for the whole battle. So as they come out, the enemy routs, and the enemy general actually almost getting away here. He gets out through the breach, but then just randomly dies. I think a few men might have managed to pot shot him. He fell off and actually fell through the ground, I believe. I was trying to find his body here, as you can see, but not being able to find it. I think his body disappeared. But anyway, the point is the enemy general has been killed, so the enemy's morale going to be dropping. They are still, though, going to make several attacks that should cut out some of them. This attack here, the one we're seeing, basically happened lots of times in various fronts where some Cossacks would charge in, maybe kill one or two of my guys, get shot to pieces and go back out. But we're never really killing enough of them to stop them from coming back from routing, so it just kept happening time after time. And every time I'm putting more and more guns on them to try and kill them as they go, not wanting to actually leave the protection of my fort. Meanwhile, my cavalry are having some fun going around the edges of the map, killing all of the random enemy units that are just standing around. Here you can see some dragoons are getting absolutely annihilated. Dragoons terrible in melee, so they're going to go right down. Another unit of dragoons was open to attack and I went for it. And at this stage, we've actually cleared up most of the enemy's army. They've lost everything either against the fort or against me just marauding around with cav, and that causes a chain rout. So there we go. The enemy's army very heavily damaged, over 4,000 losses, just over 800 on our side. So a fantastic battle. The Russians have been thoroughly denied at Kiev, but of course they have so many forces that they will be able to just do that again if they want, and they seem to already be preparing an army to go in for another attack, but I'm still confident we'll be able to hold it. I'm more worried about the forces up at St. Petersburg, where you can see they have 3 armies all around the city, and I thought if they all came together that could form quite a formidable army. What I really want to do is go out and kill one of them and then come back so that things are more secure. The most powerful one seemed to be the one there in the east, so I'm thinking perhaps that's going to be my target, and there's a weak one here actually already in my territory, which I may not need very many forces to dispatch. What I ended up doing was sending my main army out to, for now, just go and stand in front of that Russian force in the east. I immediately realized what I should have done is had Vermeers, the backup general, actually stay in the town to command the forces there, and then I could easily make a raid out against the enemy's infantry in the west, but that's just a mistake for now. And now I can actually go out and fight that army, but first I wanted to go and have a look at the other theatres to see what was going on. So in India, my reserves that have been controlling public order are starting to get more and more freed up as resistance falls, so I'm able to bring this half stack up, destroying a little Mughal army on the way, and able to bring them in to reinforce De Beers here, who's currently besieging some Mughals who now are so outnumbered they just surrender. So that's fantastic news. The city in terrible shape. We are not going to tax it. We'll have to start repairing up these buildings, particularly the ones that help with public order first and foremost. Now the main force actually has basically full movement point since it's been besieging for a while, so we might as well just move out right away, taking a surprisingly bad exchange there with a single unit of enemy cavalry on the border, and then pushing over to besiege the next Mughal settlement. I thought they would just surrender because they don't have many forces, but they did not. We auto-resolved and the result was fine, so there we go. We've captured another settlement, 2 in the same turn from the Mughals. We are absolutely destroying them. And up here we can see what was actually happening the whole time in India. The remnants of the Marathas' main force, which has been fighting with the Mughals' main forces up here, are still hanging around, unsure of what to do now that the tables have suddenly been turned on both of them by the invasion of the Dutch. Getting pretty close to Hindustan up there as well, which is of course my objective because that is my victory province. Now, meanwhile, Costa is going to be heading out east and actually not pushing up with the main offensive going north, because we basically have to spread out in order to keep all directions covered, which does mean our forces will be stretched thin. I'm going to be recruiting more to try and stop the enemy from counter-attacking down the middle of my new areas of conquest. I'm assuming the enemy are basically so weak that that isn't going to be a major threat. Now back over in the Middle East, we've got more action because the Ottomans are sneaking over towards Damascus. I'm actually going to have to split Voss's army up a little bit to leave a few forces behind to defend against a sneak attack. That settlement is not fortified, so we do need a decent number of infantry units to hold off the enemy's attack. Going to recruit some more to make that even easier. And now everything that we've got left with Courland and Voss is going to head north to go and try and take Ankara. If we can take that place, which is worth absolutely loads, it will completely cripple the Ottomans. And of course, it will mean the fact that we've been standing off against them at Istanbul for so long will be quite good, because all their armies distracted there will not be able to defend the city. Meanwhile, Gaiden sneaking up to the Crimea to try and strike a blow against Russia. But before any of that, I thought I'd try and move out with my forces in Ukraine to attack the Russians nearby. And actually, that force, which we can't see anymore, off to the right, is reinforcing this little battle. I thought I'd just destroy the small army and go back into the fort. But unfortunately, it's now a balanced engagement. And because in Empire Total War, you can't really retreat or order to retreat to a particular location. In fact, you can't do that in any Total War. We can't just go back into the fort and wait them out. So we'll have to fight this.
The mercy of the Lord is great indeed. Again, illness passes and I am restored to my full vigour. Taken in tandem with the conquests of his soldiers, it is hard to deny that the Lord intends to become master of India just as much as our governor or king does. With those conquests comes a supply of unbelievers almost impossible to imagine. How long will it take to save them? So long that I fear many will perish to the process of nature before the truth can reach them. But I cannot be swayed by the enormity of the task or the tragedy of every day before its total completion. Beyond India is the whole world, all in need of salvation. Therefore I should not consider my own task here to be all that large.
The battle starts with the classic move of a single unit of cavalry being sent out to engage with our whole army, so we're going to have to deal with that, giving them a quick volley from one unit, forming two into squares. They actually missed the first and just about catch there on the second. That's just running through the front ranks. My guy's not even reacting as the horsemen run past them, but they wake up. It must be very early in the morning. They're not really sure what's going on. Eventually they realise they're under attack by cavalry. Luckily for them, the unit further up the line can fire into the flanks of the cavalry, and that routs them right away. So now it's up to the enemy's infantry to try and make an impact, and they've got lots of this stealthy militia unit. The one that we've seen before can actually demolish our ranks if it gets really close. All they have to do is run at us. Unfortunately, they seem to get conflicting orders. They get pretty close, but then turn around and start running away, allowing us to get some extra shots on them, and that's going to really hamper their morale. Meanwhile, my cavalry are sneaking around the back of the enemy's army, but the problem with this battle is that so much of the enemy's army is in reinforcements that as I go behind the army, I'm actually getting sandwiched. So I want to try and get out the way really and just get onto the flanks until the enemy's rear flank is ready to be attacked. On the way, we're going to run through this random unit of line infantry that was out on its own. You see their numbers dropping very fast as we do so, and next door, lots of routing infantry from the Russians. All the guys attacking my left flank actually routed, so the fact they were just dilly-dallying has been fatal for their attack plan, unfortunately for them. Now on the other flank, the enemy had an equally devastating attack. They sent in 3 men, their general and 2 bodyguards, only 2 to engage with my line. You can see my guys literally ignoring them as they just ride through and continuing on to finish their formation up. I believe that when your unit is engaged by an enemy unit that is really small, they don't get drawn into an explicit melee with it, so the unit just pretends like it's not there, which is unfortunate because it means these guys are actually just hacking at the back of my men and gradually killing them, and they're just refusing to react. Further down the line, we've got a bit of line battling getting started, which I'm quite happy with. The enemy has tons of numbers in terms of their ranged units, but my line is just superior, so I'm hoping we'll still win out there, especially once my cavalry death blob, currently assembling on our left flank, gets into play. More of those Cossack infantry coming into close range to get bombarded by my grenadiers and line infantry, which will be fine by me. Now switching back to the general, eventually while playing I actually realised this was happening. I noticed this single guy was causing casualties off in the corner, and gave an attack order for the unit, and now they actually get serious about trying to take him down, and someone just stabs his horse and then stabs the guy once he falls off. So that doesn't give us the announcement for enemy general dead, because I think that's actually the general of their reinforcement army, which doesn't count for some reason. But never mind. Now we just need to finish off the enemy, and the key part of that is going to be attacking with my massive cavalry advantage, smashing the rears of enemy units already engaged for added effectiveness. This unit of line infantry getting attacked by one unit of cav, whilst the rest are mostly coming over towards the enemy's general right now. Their general is a horse arch unit at the back, but he was actually routing due to artillery fire, so they ended up getting led away. Had to bring them back in. Lots of juicy routing units to attack, including this unit of Cossacks, which was almost at full strength when we attacked it. Unfortunately, my artillery started firing at the Cossack unit as well, meaning we took a massive amount of friendly fire as we try and chase down that unit. So that is very unfortunate, but still, we're going to be wiping out whole units in very short periods of time now. The Russian army is going to be devastated by their rout. You can even see I've actually dismounted some of my dragoons because I didn't need all of my cavalry. I very rarely even bother to do that because having a light cavalry unit to run around is always so useful. Now the enemy still had a few units that were in good order coming in from their reinforcement army, so here we see some more of those deadly militia running at our line. And this time they're actually going to do it the correct way, which is run up the line without stopping. And you can see they actually get all the way with most of their troops intact, and they are going to be able to start that melee, and their morale will start rising once they are in that fight. So we're going to need to help these line infantry out. Luckily that unit's so isolated I can surround it, as you can see, and get shots onto the back of them, which will absolutely devastate their morale. The rest of the battle pretty much over. Most of the enemy's line infantry routing away. There's one more unit of those militia who I'm currently just kiting with my cavalry to avoid having to bother fighting them, because I think they'll just chain routes once I've killed a few more enemy units, so I'm not going to waste any men actually fighting them. And that unit that made the charge does rout very quickly, so now they're going to be in big trouble as my cavalry around the back can just go finish them off. Now for the whole battle I've had this unit of howitzers up on a hill overlooking the fight, not really doing very much, but now I'm going to use them to experiment with carcass shot, a new artillery round that I've researched. It's an incendiary round, so we are going to shoot fire down on the enemy's retreating forces just to see what it does, because I've never actually even got this far in the game to see these sort of weapons. And we see it actually doesn't do all that much. It sets the ground on fire, but the enemy then run through it, so I think you still have to get a direct hit with this to do anything, and these hits, which appear to be direct, don't do anything either, so not 100% sure what this weapon is supposed to be for. Perhaps it's more useful for attacking a building since it is incendiary, but anyway, nothing special happening there, and the enemy's horse archers getting finished off at the end of the battle as they came into fight with my line. So there we go, the enemy losing tons of men to very minor losses for our side. Wanted to check the kills here, noticing that the howitzers actually killed 11 and lost 11, which seemed a little bit suspicious. Maybe they were killing their own men or something, I have no idea. Anyway, the rest of the cavalry and line infantry getting a good performance as we absolutely slayed those enemy forces. Those grenadiers, they're doing very well also. That's another Russian army in Ukraine defeated.
That officer was a beast of a man. Appeared on his own right behind us, roaring and reeking of drink. A few boys went over to put him out of his misery, but they did not return. Then a few more went to find out what had happened, and met the same fate. That monster was hacking them apart with strength that splintered muskets, bent bayonets, and, well, you can imagine what it did to human flesh. Soon the captain turned the whole company about to face him, this one warrior, bloodied, frenzied, and still coming at us with a flashing blade. A wall of bayonets struck him as the line advanced in good order, and suddenly it was over. He was not a monster after all, just a man resolved to give everything to his cause no matter the odds.
So that's the victory we needed. Thought it would be easier than that, but at least now we've defeated 2 armies rather than just the one initially planned. The second army destroyed entirely and the first retreating away. We are going to fall right back into the fortifications at Kiev and start replenishing the army. I'm just going to let the Russians send more forces into the Ukraine if they want to really take it. They do have more armies around the place which might come in. So we're just going to hold our ground and wait until Gaiden is in position before we do any offensives. But I do want to make an offensive battle up in his St. Petersburg because I want to defeat this army before it arrives and then send Uata's force back west to deal with the other Russian forces currently advancing on St. Petersburg. So it's time to take this battle. We have cavalry and artillery advantage, possibly even infantry advantage, hard to say, but the balance bar is telling me this is equal. I think the infantry on the enemy side is just very numerous because each company is very big compared to mine. Now, like the last battle and most battles, it's going to get started with a single unit of cavalry making an attack. They tried to attack my right flank, but actually discovered I'd hidden all of Voss's militia in a forest along the right flank, so they're going to take some gunfire they didn't expect. Not very accurate gunfire, so it doesn't really do anything. So the militia need to actually get out the way of this. They don't want to take the cavalry charge. Unfortunately, they just walk because they're just too cool for school. They refuse to run out of the way. So I actually do sort of catch the cavalry charge before my own cav, also hidden in that forest, rush out to lock the enemy down. So we'll try and get the militia out to stop them being in the melee because they will do very poorly. Another unit diverted over to hit my main line, but they'd already squared up. So this unit of Cossacks is going to have a hard time, especially when a unit of reserve cav comes in to engage them and they actually rout after just a couple of seconds of that engagement, so that's very easy. Meanwhile, a line battle going to get started, both sides with lots of line infantry in this battle, so we should actually see some gun battling going on. We've got the Scots defending our left flank, where the enemy have lots of their units concentrated, so that's going to be great for us. The Scots, with their higher accuracy and lower reload time, are going to allow us to get lots of fire on the enemy. They're weirdly synchronized firing, blasting the enemy numbers down, not all that much because of the poor line of sight and range, but it's going to be enough to start demoralizing them while I maneuver my cav. Now here I've got some light dragoons, a gun cav unit, which I'd actually ordered to go and stand behind the enemy's forces. Unfortunately for me, you can see the route they decided to take actually made a sort of triangle, possibly passing a weird impossible rock or something, but it did bring them right through the middle of an enemy infantry unit, so they got stuck in melee. Very bad for light dragoons. Now on the other side of the field, the enemy's mass cavalry engagement continues, with cavalry on both sides taking losses as they just fight just outside the forest. But what I'm doing is trying to pull out of the fight so that the militia, who've now reformed in the woods, will have line of sight on the edge of the enemy's cavalry formations to support that attack. Meanwhile, the enemy have formed an infantry square right in front of my line. Not the best decision, but we can't really exploit it because my men just aren't firing for whatever reason. They are deciding to let the enemy do their thing. Next door, the Swiss infantry are not going to be doing that. They will blast at the enemy no matter what crazy formation they form up in. And now my men follow their example and start firing. The edge of that square is so very close to my line that this is super deadly, but even still, you can see whole volleys shot from just a couple of meters away from the enemy's line actually do pretty much nothing, getting 1 or 2 kills there. A little bit disappointing at how bad those shots are at very close range. Anyway, Uwata coming in with his cav to support a unit of infantry against a small unit of cav that had attacked, and the rest of the enemy's cav now defeated. It means we're going to have big rear attacks coming in very soon. Meanwhile, the enemy square formed up into a proper line now. We're going to have a little very close range line battle, which is going to go in my favour because I can start surrounding the enemy with the added infantry that I have, and soon the enemy realise this isn't going to go well as more infantry units forming up right in front of them there. So just one more to take out. Holding on bravely but also foolishly as they get shot from all sides, and soon they rout off the field as well, and the battle comes to an end. So just under 400 losses but over 3,000 of the enemy defeated. Exactly the sort of engagement we wanted right here, and sort of how I expected it to go. I think that balance bar at the start was lying perhaps, and we can see that one unit of line infantry getting tons of kills, probably the one at really close range, and the Scots and the Swiss infantry doing very well. Also the light dragoons getting a good performance despite being used in melee. So surprising from them. So this is a good start to our plan to save St. Petersburg. The estimated GDP of the Dutch Empire at this time dwarfs all of its rivals by far, but this domination was extremely fragile. The vast majority of it was gained through trade companies based in the capital of Amsterdam. With major wars across the globe, the Dutch administration had not been able to use the money for civic projects in their conquered territories, meaning that in reality many people were worse off under the Dutch, but more broadly, meaning that the populace could not be depended upon for taxation. The constant uncertainty over the security of trade routes made it hard for the practice of investing in merchant companies to become widespread, and tempted the enemies of the United Provinces into action. Thanks for watching. We'll have battles in all theatres, including a very important naval engagement in the next episode of Sinews of War.